Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the good news, the bad news, and the other shit. That's right. I don't believe you heard me. Yeah, the good news, the bad news, and the other shit. Ooh, boom. All right.
Life goes on. Life goes on.
Okay. All right, you guys, welcome to the good news, the bad news, and the other shit. The topic of today is one that, you know,
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
See, there you go. Temperament, man.
See, that's that art. It's artificially intelligent.
Right.
See, so remember that. It's artificially intelligent. Oh, okay, easy five. What's happening? Everybody, what's happening? What's happening? Got all the folks tuning in there.
Yeah, we got them.
You know, people think, I think that people, well, I don't know what they think. I hear different things.
Right.
People think that sometimes I go around looking for stuff to talk about, and that's actually not the way I do it because of the nature of what Victor and I do here at Pack Stereo TV. We're on that constant roll trying to get information out to you. And so I just pay attention to what comes across my desk, and that's amazing. So last week, I started seeing a number of little things on, I think it was just in the regular Yahoo, Vic, about issues. One of the first stories that caught my eye, Vic, because all of this leads up to the topic of today, which is the ongoing challenge of color.
Right. And
how it remains international. Specifically, we're going to deal with colorism in Asian communities. But this came across my desk, okay? And I think the story that first came across my desk was from the Times of India. You can go on and Google that, you guys, about a dark-skinned wife. This is an Indian news publication. Okay?
Right.
And so the Times of India, and the topic was dark-skinned wife gets email talaq, which is a divorce. In other words, she got an email divorce.
Email divorce.
So that's the first controversy.
Okay, all right.
That
all right.
She gets a divorce decree by email.
Is that better than an attorney?
So, well, certainly could be interpreted as being somewhat insulting. Right.
Right.
So, and that also that it was because of her skin tone. She said that her husband had humiliated her for the color of her skin from the first day of marriage, and that he had made plain to her his preference for a fair-skinned bride. Okay?
Okay.
Now, as part of this, and people responding to this article, which I was kind of shocked, but even though I knew this, long ago, my father and I had these discussions years ago when I was growing up and we were traveling about the perspective of color internationally. And what we had observed, what my father pointed out to me, is no matter where you went in the world where they had people of multiple colors,
right,
the people who are the lightest were given favoritism.
Yes.
Now,
that's it.
A lot of my white friends will say, "Oh, Mario, here you go again." But they don't respond like that anymore. My brothers and sisters who are not black now, because of the latest controversies, where we used to debate the police and the police corruption, no one debates that anymore. It used to be if I said the police did this, you would say, "Oh, Mario, come on." Everybody just believed the police. Nowadays, the police corruption is so well documented, rampant, the racism and bigotry, that there's no argument about that today, right?
No,
there's no argument. No. It used to be you would have to debate that. White folks that you knew would tell you, "Oh, Mario, the police aren't like that." I say they're not like that to you. But now today you have a different perspective. So the perspective of color is changing. Now, and why do I want to bring this up? Because the reason is actually growth. For us to grow and learn to care more for each other and be more accepting. In order to do that, we kind of need to understand that the issues that other folks have. And hence the issue of color. As part of this responses to this, Vic, there were a number of reports that went out. Where am I? Okay. There was another report from India about some sisters who actually backed out of their wedding due to the grooms being too dark-skinned. Now, remember, in a bunch of these places, well, my stuff doesn't, my visual aids, Vic.
That's all right. Just, you know.
Okay, but about a pair of, again, because the grooms were too dark.
Okay.
Even because in the land of a, now what happens is sort of the controversy. This is an Indian paper, remember?
Right.
Was that they were like, well, the parents. These were arranged marriages in both instances.
Right.
And for example, in the one where the guy was going to divorce his wife by email, his father, who was a big part of choosing the girl for him, did not have the same biases.
Okay.
That's because these are the people they chose for him.
Right.
And the issue was he could have stepped out of it. Now this is just one example. This also recently in Japan we talked about. Here she is, Ariana Miyamoto, right? Who was Miss Japan 2015. Everybody can take a look at her. If I can get my visual aids act right.
Okay.
Everybody can take a look. She's gorgeous.
Yeah, beautiful
who
woman.
Was challenged as to whether she was Japanese enough. Now remember, so my point is that first of all, Vic, that bias and bigotry, racism as it were, are not unique characteristics of any of specific cultures. They seem to be fairly universal.
Well, my question, and you know, I agree with you.
Bigotry, racism seems to be universal.
Now, the question is who is the most progressive community, society, or country? Are we considered the ones that's leading the change of embracing diversity and not having that in our cachet? Or are there better, or are we just looking at recognizing what is being reported? Where do we stand as far as the U.S.?
That's an excellent question, even though I bet you, Vic, it's going to be, everyone's going to answer that question with bias. Everyone.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and it's going to be very uniquely tainted by your own experiences. I grew up here in America, where the big issue now is this fear of Muslims, and I go like, I don't know about the Muslims, but the Christians been kicking ass here a long time, okay? Long time. Christians, okay? I know well about them. They'll say, hail Jesus, and put a bullet in you in a second, okay? Because the Klan prays at every meeting, okay? That's what the Klan starts out their meetings with, a prayer.
Yes.
So we have our biases. I grew up here in the U.S., all my life being affected by the racism that was in sort of part of American culture. Like I told people when I was coming up, everybody was Donald Trump. All of them.
Yeah.
Which is also, you know, again, has to show, to me, is a indicative of the change.
Right.
The change is that today this is a discussion. So the good news for everybody, the good take-home point for everybody, before we all get too upset, too mad, all of that, is that the world has actually changed. When I was a young person, this was not a discussion. No one cared. Racism toward black folks was not an issue because they were just going to kick black folks' ass as much as they could. Period. So it wasn't an issue, any debate. The average American was bigoted by what. When I was growing up, I used to say 15% of white folks are not racist. That's what I used to say growing up.
Right.
20. We could argue and make it 20, okay? But that's the way I felt growing up, because I experienced good white folks, didn't have a whole racial issue, and then I also experienced a whole lot of the other ones. I was in LA's first busing program. Now, the point being, the world is changing because we can discuss these things, and it's finally of interest. It's finally of interest that we can have a discussion of color. And I want to shout out to Japan Sociology. There's a bunch of other sites, and I'm broadcasting from my phone, so I can't see all of them right there in front of me, Vic. But a number of folks reached out to us from different organizations around the internet with whom these topics are very dear to them.
Right.
Colorism in Japan, colorism in Asian communities, and a lot of folks. I want you, Japan Sociology. I want folks to go take a look and get out there and take a look themselves, because it's something to be aware of. Now, specifically too, Vic, in those places where you have the darker people, it's interesting. Philippines, Cambodia,
right?
These are Asian communities,
of course,
where they have very darker folks there,
like you.
Exactly. And so it's interesting that certain groups, for example, in Japan and China, you actually have folks whose skins are so pale
Yeah.
that they actually consider to rival the white skin in terms of whiteness, which is interesting now. So when you think white, you don't usually think Asian, but in certain parts of China, Japanese women, also many of the Korean women, have that lighter skin complexions, and it's treasured in their own cultures.
Right.
They're treasured for that. They do everything they can.
Absolutely.
To get the whitest of the white of the white. As a part of that, when you go to other places, you find the other experiences. Again, certainly in the Philippines, Cambodia,
and let me just
Vietnam. You have the children of the black soldiers who have grown up.
Right. Look, the discussion may be discussion of comfort for people, because usually people wait for somebody else to lead towards change. Many, as much as when I just go look at the discussion about Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill and replacing that president who embraced, practices of the thinking of the time, which was they would go towards the Bible and say, well, slavery was a teaching as they interpret it that relates to your Catholic. They won't call it that and say, well, people are arguing, why should he be removed? That was the thinking of the time. So what I did is say, this is wonderful. Let's just call it the thinking of the time. So I'll turn around and tell you, all of your ancestors, all of them were beaten and dumped over ships. Grandfather, grandmother, children, cousins. And that person who is the lead dog on it is like Hitler. But it's just the thinking of their time. And you hear these kind of arguments where they say, just relate to the other things that they did that were good. So this whole interpretation of color to me is not new. It's the discussion that people feel comfortable in talking about it.
And it's good, and glad they do. We'll know we've really gone another place the day that Americans are willing to say the word genocide in the same sentence with Native Americans.
Absolutely.
They won't say genocide. You tried to wipe out the race, the whole race of them. And actually there are many of tribes you basically did wipe out. So that needs to be discussed. You need to hear the word genocide in relation to American politics here. And you need to hear some real numbers about the slave trade. They talk about the horror and the tragedy of the 6 million Jews that died as part of the Holocaust. And then we have the great people who died in the big Armenian. There's so many Holocausts, the Armenian tragedy,
Yep.
In the slave trade, what? Depending on who you quote, 100 million?
Oh, look.
200 million?
Yeah, look, the Armenian
what is the numbers?
Is ridiculous. The because that was something George Clooney was alluding to over the weekend, and I didn't get all the details, but I said, man, you go look at this. At 3/4 of those people, they had women naked on crosses. I mean, this was a genocide practice. And you sit there and say, until you go look at the history of what has happened to those who are disenfranchised, whether it's color, belief, religion, or practice, the animalistic part of it is that it exists and it continues to exist. And I don't know if this is a better time than before, because I wasn't there. I can tell you right now, I feel somewhat embarrassed.
I think it's better.
I feel a little bit embarrassed for what I call human nature to accept either the deep animalistic behavior we have. It comes along with it. The contrast of love, hate, the popularity of conquering the next. All these things to me, I said, is this the cycle of life? And what we're doing is discussing the freedom that people can express it without getting any pushback on it.
Hard to take one simple thing and stick straight to it. I know we started out, really the whole issue is the issue of colorism in Asian cultures, and actually we used it as a metaphor, I guess, or to really bring you back to the issue of racism and bigotry in general here in the United States. Take a look at this picture of this beautiful Indian young lady. Take a look at her, and I could have told you. Looking here, it's funny how the highest caste in India, same thing, the lighter skinned, of course. Don't even talk about Brazil.
Right.
Like we said, go look everywhere. And then what is the point? The point is, by being aware, we can move forward, because this is a battle for the hearts and minds of people in the world. In other words, what I'm saying, we have these discussions really because we're trying to win over your way of thinking.
Yeah.
I'll be upfront. Therefore, I don't want to talk to you in a way that offends you or makes you feel stupid, because then you're going to go rigid on me. What we really want to do is to hit your sensitivities in a way that makes you wonder, is this the way I think? Is this the way I act? And then once you do that, to move forward, by recognizing these biases in all of us, we're able to move forward, okay? Because the first thing you have to do is admit you have a bias. Whole bunch of black people, see, we're used to this. Whole bunch of black people know that white, light-skinned folks get treated better, because that's the way it's been in this community since we've been here.
Long time.
Since we've been here. So all black folks in America are varied. And we're not over it. That's why they just got through fighting over the Nina Simone. They're not over it.
Right.
They're still fighting over who is black, what is black, who's black enough, who gets to claim they black. All this. This is why black folks, and what happened was, it was actually in the media is kind of portrayed as one of those sensitivities of black Americans.
Right.
I wanted you to get a look at this, to understand this emphasis on color is not just the problem of black Americans. It's a problem in Japan, even though they won't talk about it. They won't talk about the way they treat darker people or the other ethnicities like the Okinawans.
Right.
It's a problem in Korea, in the Philippines, and Cambodia. Cambodia is a problem throughout Asia. It's also a problem throughout Latin America. Those countries that are more black.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, when you start talking about a Nicaragua,
Oh yeah.
see,
Oh yeah.
you start getting to these countries. What is Puerto Rico? I had a white person tell me they thought all Puerto Ricans were black. That's what they thought. That's what Puerto Rican meant.
Right.
Like a Latin black mix. That's so. Let me just tell you, people out there are dealing with these things. We're just hoping that by showing you, we increase your sensitivity. Again, ladies and gentlemen, that's the good news, the bad news, and the other shit. I'm loving the fact that we have this diversity